Hi everybody, welcome back to part 2 of the first episode in my series on my loft conversion. We're going to be taking a little bit more of a look in this part at the design of the loft, what preparations we did for it and why we did it so long ago and why there's been such a gap up to starting the project now. Also on top of that, before we start, if you're thinking about doing a loft conversion for yourself, then there's a number of things that you definitely need to consider first. A lot of these I'll be answering for my own design, but for your own considerations, you definitely need to look into the size and height of your loft first of all. Is it going to be big enough? The type of roof structure that you've got, and that then determines how much work it is to actually convert it and create the open space for you to be able to walk around up there. The budget, which goes hand in hand with the last one, a lot of it depends on whether you need steels and how much of the structure you've got to cut away and replace. I mean, I'm doing the most basic form of loft conversion because I'm not altering the size of my roof space, not adding any dormers or anything. It's just a roof window conversion, and I'm hoping to do it for 10 grand. That's including the work that we've already done and subtracting any of my own labour and any tools that I've had to buy for it. I did see in the magazine a similar conversion that had been quoted at £38,000. 38 grand. It doesn't even compute in my head how they can get to that point. It's just ridiculous. Fourth point I would say is access. So where are you going to put your stairs in? How much space have you got on your other floor below the loft to put that in? And then that kind of goes hand in hand then with your fire regulations and the escape corridor that you've got to create. If you look into that, then you'll see there's a lot of regulations, a lot of hoops to jump through. The main one being you have to have a 30-minute fireproof escape corridor. If you can't achieve that, you have to have other drastic measures like having escape hatches on the roof. The window has to open a certain way. You might have to have an escape staircase on the outside of the house and things like that. But depending on the type of house you've got, depends on how well you meet some of these regulations and considerations. Myself, we've been extremely, I wouldn't say lucky. We bought the house and I had the idea to convert it straight away. I just saw the opportunity that the house had with how it meets all the criteria straight off the bat with very little changes. Not that I don't claim to be an expert in this, by the way. I learned pretty much everything I know about loft conversions from a Haynes manual. The Haynes manual for loft conversions. If you are interested, I definitely recommend picking up a copy, having a read through it, and you'll see all these considerations in depth. Coupled with that and additional internet research following it, I've been able to know enough to be able to get through the building regulations and council inspections. And once this completed, the council are going to be signing this off, and it's going to be an official bedroom, a habitable space, which means my house insurance will be covered. If you don't go through the council, you can't claim it to be a habitable space, and if you sleep up there without having the full building regs, then unfortunately if there is an issue and you have a fire or anything like that, then your house insurance will be void, and you'll be right up shit creek. Let's start having a look at the design then, shall we? So just briefly, this is the before layouts. This is the ground floor. Obviously this is where we come in, the hallway and the stairs up to the first floor. 2 reception rooms, a dining area, kitchen, garage, and move across, and we've got the stairs coming up from the first floor, the bathroom, rear bedroom, front bedroom, both nice sizes, and then a tiny little box room. This is what we decided was going to be used as our stairway and access. Our roof ridge runs across there in the loft, so we've got an up and over style roof, so the stairs running from the front of the house will follow the line of the roof, effectively bringing us into the middle of the room. The other benefit with the stairs being there is that this wall here and this wall here are internal load bearing walls, so they're brick walls that run from the loft all the way down to the foundations, and basically not only do they act then as support for the room above and the joists above, but also they're already classified as 30-minute fireproof walls. So once these doors are changed to fire doors, this now would become a fire corridor, and then the same downstairs as well. So this then is the plan for the loft. We start with the stairs there, which I've drawn all the way down to the first floor, coming up. They then bend round, and on the original plan here, they were due to come a little bit short of the centre ridge board. An alteration that was made was actually that these needed to be extended a little bit longer, so that there wouldn't be too much of a gap down here, and so that once you got to the top of these stairs, the building regulations state that you have to have a 1.8 metre minimum height of headroom at the side of the stairs. Now at this point here, where the newel post was going to be, that wasn't quite going to be 1.8 metres, so unfortunately I had to extend the stairwell out more so to the ridge board, which meant that the ensuite got a little bit smaller, but it just allowed that much more headroom. The upshot of that was that the stairs needed to be longer as well, because I didn't want to have a gap between the end of the stairs and the wall. So then this became a square turn there, and then the straight line, and then a winder at the top. The slight change then became that instead of having this part here that comes outwards from the door opening, this then just became the new place for this section of the wall. So now the wall's going to come across from the ensuite, 45-degree angle wall for the door, which is actually going to open the other way now, and everything else stays the same. The current roof window that was already in was positioned there specifically for the ensuite, because it was above where the bathroom is. I always knew that that was going to be where the ensuite was going to be, and that we were going to have to try and make use of the highest point of the loft for the shower. The other roof window then was to go here, and we've got a short, or not a long room, we've got a square almost room, and so shorter, wider rooms normally work better with larger windows, whereas if you've got a long, thin room, you'd sort of go for smaller but more windows of a smaller size to light them better. So we've gone for one large roof window there, which will actually be above where the bed will be positioned, and then there'll be a access point there and an access point here to enter a storage space in the low part of the roof, in the eaves. Part of the eaves here behind the bathroom will be for utility access, so for accessing the pipes for the sink and the toilet, the macerator, also the electrics. The main circuit will actually come up through the airing cupboard, which is below here, and the lighting circuit actually starts here as well from the bathroom lighting. The plan also involves, I've drawn the chimney flue on there, and that will actually be incorporated to become a dressing table. And in this lower part of the roof, which is still not very low, but that will be part of the roof that will be turned into fitted wardrobes. Behind those wardrobes, I did originally plan just 2 more access points, but because I've worked it out now, there's going to be 3 individual wardrobe openings, so I'm going to have 3 access points, and there'll be a light there and a light there that we'll be able to access to turn on to get into the storage. Another change, only a slight change, is that this was originally planned to be an access door to a large cupboard. That's actually changed now, and this is going to be where a chest of drawers is also going to be built into the wall to match the wardrobes. And all in all, it's a large space, but because it's being used so effectively, it shouldn't seem like such a large space. It's just that everything else has been built in. We're accommodating quite a lot of space for the ensuite. Something I wanted to bring up as well was if when you do a loft conversion, you have to have a separation from the rest of the house. So what would have been the case was if we remove the door from the bedroom below, where the stairs are coming up from, and then we increase the size of the landing, then we would have had to have a door in the loft separating the loft space from the rest of the house. But you're not allowed to go to the door from the top of the step, so you have to have at least an 800mm by 800mm landing and then a doorway. So effectively what would have happened was we'd have had the wall coming across here and across here, and the door would have had to have been that way, which would have just impacted so much more on the amount of space that was available in the room. So we talked to the council, and luckily we could keep the door. Switch back to here. We could actually keep this door on, which means that now the stairway up to the loft is actually at the bottom of that staircase is where the door is that separates it from the rest of the house. So it allows us to meet the criteria that way and save space in the loft, which I was really happy about, to sort of maximise the amount of space up there. Heating wise, we've been warned against overheating it because it's going to be well heated via the 2 floors below, but there is going to be a small radiator just there on the outside of the ensuite wall, and there'll also be a towel radiator next to the sink there, and also there'll be what is already a radiator at the bottom of the stairs for the bedroom that's there at the moment, which will stay there. So all in all there'll be 3 small radiators, but we don't expect to have to do a lot in terms of heating. The other thing that we did in preparation, which I was happy about, was that we had the waste pipe fitted in advance. So just here, this is where my airing cupboard is downstairs in the bathroom. I'll switch back again. This is that point that we were just looking at. The waste pipe actually runs up here through into the loft, under my bath, out to my soil stack, the back of the toilet there. So when we had our bathroom done a year ago, we made sure that we were well prepared for the loft again. It hardly cost anything extra. We just had to make sure that we had the waste pipe running there, which was actually allowed to be a smaller waste pipe based on having a macerator in the loft. And we also just run the hot and cold taps up there as well. So in terms of preparation, the water was running up there, the lighting circuit came off the ceiling, the bathroom lights and the upstairs lighting circuit. And the last thing I did was run a brand new circuit from our consumer unit under the stairs, and it's got its own dedicated trip switch and circuit for the mains into the loft, which again is part of the building regs. So as part of the plans, I've drawn out what will be a proposed first floor, and the only real change, as I've said before, is this staircase coming up, and at the moment it's drawn as a winder because this was drawn before that adaptation that I come across. There's no alterations to the ground floor. This is a view from the side of the house, just showing the headroom from the top of the stairs now. So with that alteration to the winder, there's now a 1.8 metre at the side of the stairs, and at the centre of the staircase the headroom will be 2.1 metres because the loft roof is at such an angle. The regulation says it's got to be 1.9 in the centre of the stairs, I believe, so we're well in excess of that. It also just shows quickly the roof structure, so the positioning of the roof windows, which are centre pivoting above where the purlin is. It shows that there's going to be collar ties underneath the ridge board with an area for the electrics and for airflow, and shows how the joists fit sit on top of the current ceiling joists, and we'll go into them in just a moment with the flooring. So again, going back to fire precautions, there's an enclosed 30-minute fire protected escape corridor leading directly to an exit. So starting from the loft where the ensuite and this is the main part of the bedroom, you'd come down here, and this red line indicates where it's going to be fire protected. There's the smoke alarm at the top. If we then move to the first floor, sorry about the shadow by the way, it's the only way I can get any decent lighting. We come down these stairs, the fire escape corridor continues along these walls and with these changed doors, and then down and round down the other stairs to the ground floor, which we're now coming down this direction. All of these walls around this staircase are all brick, and once you get to the bottom of the stairs you're literally at the exit and straight out. So as long as those doors are changed and the fire alarms are all interlinked, then that meets the fire regulations. The interlinked fire detection system has to be mains powered, and all the first floor rooms have got escape windows, including the stairway on the second floor, which is also, by the way, toughened glass because it's on a stairway. I think that pretty much covers the fire precautions for us. We're quite lucky in that this type of house meets all the precautions almost naturally, but there again, that's one of the attractions of why we bought it in the first place. And the last drawing that I've got on my plans, it's a little bit more detail of the insulation level. So this is a diagram that I've more or less used from the Superquilt website, and it just basically shows the different layers for the roof layout. So you've got the outside surface, the tiles, the roofing battens and the batten cavity, the breather membrane, rafter cavity there, so this is where all the rafter is. But the insulation, the first layer of insulation actually comes with a 50mm gap for the airflow, so that the air can or the roof can breathe, as they call it. The air can flow up from where the soffits are up and over and stop any damp causing. There's then another small rafter cavity from using the 70mm PIR insulation, and the thickness that's left over on the rafters is actually more than 70mm. We've then got a multi-foil insulation level, which is the super quilt, which is the equivalent of 55mm of PIR insulation, so it's very, very efficient. It takes up a lot less room, which in the in a roof or loft conversion, then that's very valuable headspace. So it's a good idea to use the super quilt. Actually, it was very good to be put up as well. And on top of that then is the plasterboard, and that completes the main roof structure. The alternative to that is underneath where the dwarf walls are. The dwarf walls will actually have 100mm PIR insulation, so I don't have to, because I'm not so desperate for the headspace obviously there, so I don't have to use the super quilt, which is a little bit more expensive. But underneath here I'm going to be using another type of multi-foil insulation, but it's not the super quilt. It's a little bit cheaper, but it'll obviously keep that space a little bit warmer. It'll be a cooler room because that's effectively what was going to be a storage loft, but it'll also act then as a vapour barrier, the same as what the super quilt does in the rest of the loft. So if I'll quickly just touch on when we first bought the house, we had a structural survey done, and he noticed that when he looked up into the loft, the felt that was underneath the tiles had actually perished. It had been up there that so long, and it was just dangling down from the rafters like ribbons. That meant then that you could see daylight between some of the tiles, as I believe the gable wall had what they called spread somewhat, which just means it just ever so slightly leans over with the height of it, and then obviously because it leans over, that creates a little tiny gaps in between some of the tiles. So that was obviously something that we needed to sort out as quickly as possible. We spoke to the vendors about that, and they were fantastic. They agreed to split the price of the job, which was quoted at £2,400, and that included taking off all the tiles, all the battens, all the old felt, replacing it with new breathable membrane, new battens, and putting the old tiles back on, which is our preference. Because of the age of the house, we quite like the idea of keeping things the same age. All we did was just replacing the old one, broken one, sorry. One of the things that I was quite conscious of that I wasn't really into was the idea of having to get steels, because whether or not we was going to need a crane to get them in, how they were going to get into the loft themselves, whether or not we could get that through the opening between the rafters, or whether I've seen people having to put holes in the side of their gable wall to pass it through at the level that it needs to be. And I really wasn't interested in doing all that much destruction to the house, the actual brickwork of the house. So what we looked at was and I invite you to do a Google for timber spanning tables. Look on the images section for the results, and you'll find that there's spreadsheets that tell you the distance in which a structural piece of wood, can be bridged from one point to another, and what, depending on the distance, depends on how big that piece of wood needs to be, and how far apart they need to be spread. So what we did was we discovered that our distance of 3.3 metres from our party wall to our first supporting wall, internal supporting wall, is 3.3 metres, and that we could get away with a 7x2 being bridging the gap from one end to the other, which I was glad to hear, because that meant we didn't need to have steels. So we went ahead and had at the point when all the tiles were taken off and being replaced, we because I was carrying out so much work on the rest of the house at the time, because the entire house needed renovating, we actually we'd already got a contractor in to do the roof. So I says, let's just bite the bullet on this one. I'm busy enough as it is. Let's get somebody in to install the flooring joists. So that's what we did, and I'll put some photos up in a second showing that process being done. We had a large new loft access put in at the time, so that we could really utilise the space up there. And I said, well, whilst we're doing all that, we might as well have the roof window put in. So our first roof window was put in, which I've just pointed out on the plans, which was positioned where we wanted the ensuite to be. All in all, we had all of that done. We had it done like in a shorter space of time. I could have done it quite, if I look back now, if I hadn't had it done then, I would have done all the flooring joists myself. It's not a drastic job, to be fair. But obviously, with everything else that I was doing at the time, it made a lot of sense to do that. And in hindsight, it was a good decision. So that was our preparation and why we had it done, and that was basically our starting point for when we started this job in earnest in January 2020. So I hope you've all found that interesting. I didn't mean for it to be half an hour long, but unfortunately I'm having to work on some new software, the Photos app on Windows 10, because it no longer supports Windows Movie Maker, which is what I used to use to edit my videos. Would have been a lot easier if I could have just put a lot of the designs on there as a still photograph that I could have just done a commentary over the top of. But I'm still working out how to do that on the new Windows app. If anybody's got any instructions for me on how to do that, then stick it in the comments below, and that would be a great help. The third episode is going to be predominantly based on the commencement of the job, sistering up and making the roof rafters a bit larger, and then cutting a hole in the roof and fitting the second Facro roof window. So that was a pretty big job. Got quite a few pictures for that, and yeah, I think you'll find that interesting. I hope you've found this one interesting and maybe learned a few things. If you've got any comments, leave it below, and if you want to see the next episodes, then subscribe, and I hope to see you there. Stay healthy. Thanks for watching. Chatters DIY out.